The cold cut my face like sharp knives, but something inside me kept pushing me forward. As my mammoth walked slowly beside me, I noticed an old passage that appeared among the trees buried in the snow. On this passage, made of stones, intricate symbols were carved. These symbols seemed to be written in the language of nature. Each line and curve seemed to be trying to tell me something. I felt the stones with my hands in the cold, and as I ran my fingers over the symbols, an echo rose from somewhere deep inside my heart. It was as if this passage was a door that opened me to another world. I looked back at the mammoth. It too paused, as if aware of this mystical passage. I gave him an encouraging gesture, and we crossed the passage together. We took one step, then another. It was quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath at this point. It was as if this was a place where only the storm came to rest. When we crossed the pass, I found myself on a snow-covered plain. The air was heavy, everything was quiet. It was a moment of absolute silence in which I could hear the heartbeat of nature in a moment of space, without a sound. Just then, a shadow appeared in the distance. It looked like a huge bird, but it was far beyond a real bird. Its feathers contained all the colors of the sky. It was like a creature that carried night and day at the same time. There was a fiery glow in his eyes, and he looked at me as if he had been born at the intersection of hot and cold air. There was not only power in its eyes, but also ancient wisdom. The creature lifted off the ground with heavy wing beats, so slow and graceful, as if its every movement was part of a ritual. After a few circles in the sky, the bird looked directly at me, as if in the depths of its eyes it was giving me a sign. I stood silently next to my mammoth, not moving, because I had an intuition that I should not disturb this creature. Suddenly, beams of light emanated from the bird's wings. When these beams fell on the snow, they created colorful sparkles on the white earth. This was no ordinary light. Something inside me whispered that this was a sign. Every color I looked at awakened a memory in me, summoned an emotion. Even my mammoth looked curiously at the glowing colored reflections, its eyes seemingly immersed in another realm. This bird was like a messenger, speaking to the wind and the sky, representing the spirit of nature. At that moment, I realized that not only my body, but also my soul was being tested here. It was as if this creature had appeared before me as a teacher to teach me the language of nature. The bird soared a little higher, flapping its wings, then disappeared into the distance with a heavy rustle. For a while I stood there, unable to do anything, trying to understand what this encounter was telling me. It was as if the bird had whispered a secret to me as it soared into the sky, but wanted me to find the answer within myself. Looking at the snowy ground under the colors, I made an inner promise. I would follow this ancient wisdom and try to understand all the secrets of nature. As we continued on our way, I was aware that everything was different now, as if nature was speaking to us. The branches of the trees seemed to whisper to me in the gentle breeze. With every step, even the rustling of the snow under my feet was different. The bird had opened a door for me. The world was no longer the old world. In the midst of the snow and storm, I had become a part of nature. As I moved forward with this feeling of newness, I knew that once I crossed that passage, nature would open up to me aspects I had never seen before. This was not just an encounter, but a mission, the beginning of a journey under the influence of this extraordinary encounter. We moved forward with slow steps. With each step, I felt as if I was no longer in nature, but part of it. As my mammoth moved beside me, it seemed to trust me more and more. A bond had strengthened between us, like an invisible rope protecting us. As I looked at the spot where the mythical bird rose into the sky and disappeared, I thought that other nature spirits were watching us. I had a deep feeling that the eyes of these ancient beings were on us. After traveling for a while, we had to stop because of a sudden burst of wind. The wind was so strong and cold that it was almost impossible to breathe. The mammoth blocked my way, trying to protect me with its nose, but an inner courage spurred me on. I could hear a humming in the wind, as if it was whispering something to me. When I had taken a few steps, a shape suddenly appeared out of the snow. It was a deer, but not just any deer. Its eyes sparkled like stars. When I looked into its eyes, I felt as if I had plunged into the depths of a dark and endless forest. The deer approached me, moving slowly through the snow. Each step was heavy and powerful, as if it were touching the veins of the earth. After 2 steps, he stopped and bowed his head towards me. There was a wise peace in his eyes. It was as if he was telling me, as long as you move in accordance with the rhythm of nature, we will be with you. The deer came a little closer and touched its nose to my hand. At that moment, a warmth spread through me, as if all my fears had melted away. I was standing in front of a being who knew me, who knew my past, who saw my future. Suddenly, other images appeared in the depths of his eyes. The cycle of life, flowers blooming in the earth, forest fires and rebirth. This creature was whispering to me the secrets not only of nature, but also of life and death, of the end and the beginning. When I left this ancient spirit, I felt not just a hunter, but a sage who understood the balance and order of nature. Now every hunt, every step, every breath had a deeper meaning. We set off, this time conscious of a greater purpose. Nature had shown me the ways of existence and maintaining balance. As I moved forward with my mammoth, I felt that everything on the road was part of a whole. The mythical creatures were no longer just beings to be feared, but teachers, companions. Every tree, every snowflake, every rock we passed told us a story. As I walked through this ancient world, I knew that I was no longer just a hunter, but a traveler who would protect the balance of nature. As I continued on my way, even the howling of the wind began to sound different. It was like a whisper in the language of nature, as if each one wanted to reveal its secrets to me. With every step, with every breath, I felt that I was understanding the world around me more deeply, as if the snowflakes, the sky, the stones, and the trees were speaking one by one, explaining their existence. The road ahead of us led deep into a narrow valley. We could hear the sound of water filtering through huge rocks covered with snow. It was a deep, echoing melody that seemed to grow in the echoes of the valley. We followed this sound, and as we went deeper, the air changed and a warm current enveloped my body. My mammoth seemed to feel the difference too, lifting its nose and sniffing the air. When we crossed the valley and reached the source of the water, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like another world. In the middle of the earth, hot springs were exposed, and the vapors were rising into the sky. Hidden in a hidden corner of the valley, these waters radiated a soft warmth amidst the snow and ice. This warmth settled over me like a tranquility. I had not expected to meet another creature in this enchanting place, but the secrets of nature continued to amaze me. A faint but enormous shadow appeared in the vapor. My heart began to race. This figure looked like a dragon gliding with the grace of a serpent. The light emanating from its body danced in the vapors as the length of its tail softly wrapped around the stones of the valley. Its eyes had a depth unlike any creature I had ever seen. The dragon was like a being that gathered together the forces of nature. It was the essence of earth, air, water, and fire. As it looked me up and down, I felt as if there was a test in its eyes. At that moment, an ancient fear rose in me, but at the same time, I felt a deep respect. When the creature approached me, I trembled with my whole body. It was like facing the greatest force of nature. As the dragon looked at me, I felt a kind of connection, a connection that was not conveyed through words, but through an inner wisdom. In the depths of his eyes, I saw the most hidden secrets of nature, that the cycles never stop, that death turns into rebirth, winter into spring, night into day. This creature was telling me that life and death always walk side by side. My fear was replaced by a sense of peace. It was as if the dragon had entrusted me with the task of being the guardian of nature. At the end of this encounter, the dragon slowly retreated deeper into the valley and disappeared in the vapors. But its presence had left a permanent mark on my soul. It was as if nature had chosen me, I no longer felt like just a hunter or a traveler, but an ambassador carrying the secrets of nature. As our journey continued, I felt the weight of these secrets that nature had opened to us. We moved forward with my mammoth, but I was no longer alone at every step. Deer, birds, and dragons, the whispers and guidance of these ancient beings echoed within me. They were turning me into a wiser traveler with every step, helping me to understand the ancient power of nature. As I was so close to nature and so connected to its secrets, I realized that returning to my shelter would no longer make sense. This journey was the beginning of a completely different life for me. When I returned, the traces of this journey I had experienced would remain as a shining knowledge in the depths of my soul. I would protect and share this knowledge and become a part of the balance and cycle of nature. As our journey continued, I discovered new secrets every day. After the warm waters of the valley, the cold air descended on us again, but the warmth inside me never subsided. As my mammoth and I moved forward, we reached the edge of a deep forest, the trees so large that they almost completely covered the sky. Here, the shadows were deeper and the sounds of nature more distinct. With every step, the rustling of the trees was like a melody. I wanted to go deeper into this forest where I felt the spirit of nature inside me. As I was passing through the trees, I suddenly heard a rustling. I paid attention, and my mammoth paused, its ears pricked up. My eyes searched for movement in the darkness. After a few steps, an animal appeared before my eyes. It was a wolf, but not just any wolf. Its fur was shimmering, its eyes almost human, with a deep intelligence. In its gaze, I sensed that it knew something, that it had to decide whether to share its secrets or not. The wolf slowly approached and rubbed its nose against my mammoth. It was a small but determined presence next to the huge body of my mammoth. After staring at me in silence for a while, the wolf made a rustling noise. It was as if it was trying to say something in the language of nature. The curiosity in my eyes made me approach him. At that moment, deep in the wolf's eyes, I saw the cycle of nature. I felt the connection between animals and humans, the balance between prey and predator. This creature was like a guardian of nature, existing not only to survive, but also to maintain this balance. The wolf took a step back and headed deeper into the forest. At that moment, I felt something change inside me, and I decided to follow him, my mammoth trailing heavily behind me. Before disappearing into the forest, the wolf turned its head and stood there, looking at me. It was as if he was inviting me into the heart of the forest. As I followed the wolf, I was mesmerized by the mysterious and dark world between the trees. The rustling, like the melody of nature, intoxicated me. Finally, the wolf stopped under a tree and raised its head and let out a long howl. This howl echoed back from the depths of the forest. At that moment, other creatures of the forest gathered around him. Some small birds, some other animals. They had all heard the sound and had come here. The feeling of being part of this community was enlightening. Nature was showing that it was not only a hunter, but also a community. The wolf was like the leader of this community, following me. Suddenly, a shimmering light appeared in the trees. As it attracted everyone's attention, I quickened my steps towards the source of this light. As I approached the source of the light, a mesmerizing sight opened before me. Among the trees, there was a golden yellow glow. It looked like some kind of puddle, but instead of water, it was a liquid that glowed like gold. The beams of light moving over it were like the soul of this liquid. Each beam danced in a certain rhythm. Something inside me whispered that this liquid was one of the forces of nature. Here was a source of energy for creatures, a source of life. The wolf went to the liquid and started drinking. I joined him, and at that moment I felt a connection in my heart. I thought that this liquid was the heart of nature. When I drank it, a warmth appeared inside me, an enlightenment in my soul as the life energy enveloped me. Everything around me began to seem brighter, more alive. The rustling of the trees became more meaningful, the song of the birds more melodious. Suddenly, Another layer was added to my immense experience. On the opposite bank, above the shimmering liquid, a mesmerizing figure appeared. A fairy, perhaps representing the spirit of nature, stood before me. Her luminous wings fluttered like a dance in the sky. Her eyes were filled with wisdom and peace. At that moment, I felt as if this fairy was going to tell me something. As I was trying to come to my senses, the fairy fixed her eyes on me and conveyed a message. Her voice touched my soul like a gentle melody. Nature wants to speak to you. Legends connect the past and the future. Remember, every life is a cycle. You are part of this cycle. These words resonated inside me and took on a new meaning. I realized that I was on my way to becoming not only a hunter, but also a defender of nature. Nature was guiding me, opening its secrets. With the energy of the liquid and the fairy figure, I was now on a mission to protect the balance of nature. The wolf stood next to me and bowed his head. At that moment, I felt that we were part of a community together. This community of nature was a family, and I was a member of this family. I realized that everyone has a role in the cycle of nature. Slowly, thoughts about what this role would be began to take shape in my head. After looking at me for a while, the fairy figure disappeared in the light, but the mark it left on my heart echoed in my soul. This new connection with nature was opening a new chapter in my life. Now I would not only have to fight for survival, but also undertake a mission to protect the spirit of nature. The wolf raised its head and gave another deep howl. Then he returned to the waterhole and continued drinking. Inspired by him, I bent down to drink the liquid once more. At that moment, I felt a sense of determination. I was not alone on this journey. Creatures would join me in the fight to protect the spirit of nature. Together with my wolf and my mammoth, I prepared to leave this immense forest. I was now filled with a new purpose. Nature was calling me, offering me opportunities to open its secrets and become a part of it. A new life would begin in the arms of nature, in which I would take an active role. With every step, the spirit of nature would resonate within me, and I would be filled with the wisdom of mythical creatures. And so, I was on the threshold of a new adventure into the depths of nature, a journey that was not just a hunting journey for me, but a way for me to become a protector of nature. Every creature, every plant, every water source was now my responsibility. As I traveled through a world full of the mysteries of nature, I would move forward with this new mission in my heart and dedicate the rest of my life to the mission of protecting the spirit of nature.